How to Train Your Dragon was really successful when it first came out back in 2010, so much so that it spawned several other sequels, and to date the franchise has earned more than $1.6 billion globally. And it's because of this, the studio is going to be adapting it into a live action version. Now, I'm not necessarily against live action adaptation as a hard rule. I do think they can be done well, but I'm kind of cautious because I think the studio is basically just lacking creativity. So they're just trying to capitalize on something that they already own the rights to. And with this movie, maybe it couldn't turn out well, but I'm not necessarily optimistic so far. But I do like this information that's coming out about it right now. So they're saying that Gerard Butler is going to be reprising the role for the character that he voiced in the original movie, which I think is kind of a cool idea. Universal Pictures live action adaptation of DreamWorks animation franchise How to Train Your Dragon is bringing back a familiar face, as sources tell Deadline that Gerard Butler, who voiced Hiccup's father Stoic in the original movies, will reprise the role. It's not often that you see an actor who voiced a character in an animated work actually reprise that role if they're going to do a live action adaptation, but it does happen occasionally. Kind of a recent example is Jen Taylor, who famously voiced the character of Cortana in the Halo video game series, reprised that role to play Cortana in the live action version of it. So yeah, it can happen occasionally. And with this situation, I think Gerard Butler actually does. Not only we know that he can sound like the character, but I think he looks enough like the character, or at least he can capture the essence of the character in a live action setting. Now, granted, he's not nearly as big as Stoic in the animated version, but at the same time, it was an animated version. There's some liberties that they can take with the design of him. And obviously that's part of the live action adaptation. Is not going to look one for one the exact same, but still, especially if you get him, you put the long beard on him and stuff like that, it could work pretty well, I think. Now, I'm not necessarily as optimistic about some of the other casting choices because the only other casting information that we had for this movie came out last May when it was announced that these two characters, what's his name? Mason Thames, who starred in Black Phone, and Nico Parker, who starred in The Last of Us, are going to be playing the characters of Hiccup and Astrid. Now, this is the one where there was a little bit of controversy when it was first announced, because you got to keep in mind when this first was announced, this was around the time that Disney was releasing their live action adaptation that was a race swap version of The Little Mermaid. And people were pointing out that Nico Parker is part black, and it doesn't seem right that she would be playing a Nordic character. In fact, there was a lot of other images kind of circling around stuff like this, pointing out that obviously she's different. But I will say, because I was saying this kind of at the time and sort of defended this, I can see this kind of working, but we have seen, like with The Little Mermaid, for instance, that race swapping isn't a way to get people to see a movie. In fact, my opinion, when studios try to market it, that they're race swapping a character and try to really boast about doing that, it just kind of strikes me as them trying to create a shield or try to block out some criticism in advance because they don't think that their project is going to be too well. So they're just going to try to do something like that so that they can say people are just racist if they don't like it. But so far, we really haven't heard a ton of that about this movie. But granted, we haven't heard a ton of information about this movie already. I mean, it's not set to come out for another year and a half. So I don't know, maybe it would work since Nico Parker isn't super dark or anything like that. I can see them maybe straightening her hair, making her hair blonde or something like that. And she could kind of fit as Astrid, but I mean, it's really just a matter of what the studio is wanting to do. Because if they really try to push the whole race swapped aspect of it too hard, then it really is an indicator that the movie's not going to be any good. But if they just try to ignore that and just treat it like, no, we just cast the person who fit the role, and once we can see some first images, and I don't know, it might turn out pretty well. But so far, I'm just cautious, like I'm cautious with most other live action adaptations.